So we're going to start our lecture today talking about trade-offs. Now, when choices are made where a person has to accept having less of one thing in order to get more of something else, the results are called a trade-off. So it's kind of like you're choosing to get one thing instead of something else. Choosing when you go to, let's say, a gas station to buy a Coke instead of a candy bar. That'd be a trade-off. If you go with the Coke, the trade-off is the candy bar. So it usually means giving up something else to get something different. Now, it doesn't only apply to money, for example. Trade-offs could also go for time. Let's take a look at our example we have right here. We're looking at these pictures right here. We see a girl who has a choice. Her choices are, maybe it is a Saturday, and she has a big test coming up. So she has to make a decision coming from Monday. Do I spend some of my Saturday studying, or do I go out late with my friends? So if she makes the decision that she is going to go study on Saturday, her trade-off would be going out to a club with her friends. If she goes to the club, her trade-off would be the time that could have spent studying. So again, there's no free lunch. What you decide to do, you're giving up something else. So this is a trade-off. Let's keep on going. Let's say that we got a list here. You have 5 things that you are going to do this Friday night. With your partner right now, you can make that list. For the internet one, I'm going to go right to the next slide. All right, so let's take a look at what is opportunity cost. Opportunity cost basically is, when we're looking at it, it is our next best option. Opportunity cost is very similar to trade-off, except for that it would be our next best option. So So opportunity cost is very closely related to trade-offs. Now we can look at the slide right here. We can give you a couple examples of what opportunity cost would be. Let's say we've got a girl here, and she has three guys who want to go out with her. So she gets phone calls from them. They're both paying attention to her, and it's Saturday night, and all 3 of them have asked her out. So she has to make a decision. Which guy is she going to go out with, if any of them? And let's say you guys could pick up here, ladies. Which one, who do you think you would choose of these 3? So she needs to make a pick. So trade-offs would be the 2 guys who she does not go out with. So trade-offs would be the 2 guys who she does not go out with. Now, the opportunity cost would be her next best option. So her opportunity cost is basically the second guy. The guy who she'd go out with if the other guy says, you know what, it's not going to work out. Maybe she goes out with the other guy instead. That's her opportunity cost. Opportunity cost, you want to write this down, it is your next best option. So trade-offs again. Trade-offs are all your other options you're giving up. Opportunity cost is your next best option. And it doesn't work. This is more of a microeconomics example with her and her dating life. It also works for governments. And an example we see again and again for governments is the guns or butter case. Basically what guns or butter is, if you're a government, you only have a certain amount of money in your budget. The the United States, for example, our GDP is about $17 trillion a year, all the goods that we produce and everything. And our government only gets a certain amount of money that it can use. So even our government has limits on what they can do. So they have to decide, guns, do we need to spend more money on things protecting us? The police force potentially, even more so the military, which is a big expenditure. Do we spend our money there? Is that necessary? Or butter? Butter issues would be, trying to get food for people. Do we put more money into food or into defense? This often takes the case when people look at, where do you want to put money? Do you want to put money into programs that help people, Social Security, potentially could be food stamps, programs like that? Or do we want to spend more money on defense and military? That's the guns or butter. And the one that you give up, your next best option is your opportunity cost. So again, opportunity cost, your next best option. So let's continue by looking at Again, the differences between trade-offs and opportunity cost. I'm going to give you an example here from basketball real quick. In 2013, way back last year, we had our free agent basketball players. So here's going to be a list of all the free agent basketball players that were ranked by SBNation.com. So they have the number one free agent who was quickly re-signed by his team would be Chris Paul. Then you had Dwight Howard, James Harden, Andrew Bynum. You're seeing some pretty big names up there. Then we get all the way down to, we get Byron Millis and Timofey Mozgov, Lamar Odoms, up there is now more famous for being married to someone than playing basketball. So now we have our free agent ratings. So if you were a basketball team and you were a contender and maybe you want to take the next step, you want to sign a big free agent, you would look on here and you'd have to evaluate what do you need. And maybe your big goal would be to sign Chris Paul. But Chris Paul, unfortunately, he won't sign for you. He likes playing with Blake Griffin. He decides to go back to the Clippers, so you can't get him. So you can't get him. Your next best option would be your opportunity cost. Allow me to rephrase that. Let's say you wanted Chris Paul. So Chris Paul is who you want, but then you're like, he plays guard, but if we can't get Chris Paul, Dwight Howard, maybe he would be the next person who you'd want to get on your basketball team. So in that case, Chris Paul would be the decision to one you wanted to go for, and your next best option would be Dwight Howard. Or maybe you guys who really play basketball realize you want a guard, maybe it's James Harden. So this would be who your next best option would be on here. So if you wanted Chris Paul, can't get him, Dwight Howard would be your opportunity cost. Now, let's say you sign Chris Paul, all these other players on here, Dwight Howard, James Harden, Andrew Bynum, Josh Smith, they would be all trade-offs. So they're trade-offs, but Dwight Howard, if he was your next best option, he would be your opportunity cost. Let's keep on going here. So again, here we can see a definition of trade-off and opportunity cost. A trade-off is an exchange of one thing in return for another. Opportunity cost, the cost of passing up the next best choice when making a decision. You need to know that term. I've mentioned it many times. You need to know it. Let's move on, and now we're going to talk about maximizing utility and rational decision making, what that actually is. So let's take a look at first off, what is maximizing utility and rational decisions? So most decisions are not the all or nothing variety. Most of our decisions, we're not doing all of this or all of that. Most of our decisions actually aren't like that. Most of our decisions involve choosing a little more of something or a little less of something. Rational decision making involves comparing the cost and benefit of that incremental or little change. Incremental means like just a little bit. So again, it means the rational decision making involves comparing the cost and benefits of that incremental change. Basically, it is the additional cost of undertaking some activity is called the marginal cost. So like just a little bit more is called the marginal cost. The additional benefits are called the marginal benefits. So, rational decision making. We want to look at the marginal benefits are greater than the marginal cost. So in rational decision making, we want the marginal benefits to be greater than the marginal cost. Let's take a look back to our girl and her dilemma of what to do on her Saturday. Now, some of you might be thinking, hey, wait a minute. Why can't she do homework and go to the club on Saturday? Isn't there Sunday? Is her Sunday free? Is that open? So what a lot of successful people do is they say, well, I'm going to go out with my friends because it's important to have friends, important to have a social life, but I also need to do my homework. So maybe there's a time I could study. Maybe Sunday's open. Maybe I go to church on Sunday and it's 1 o'clock and maybe you don't have a job and you could study at Sunday at 1 and put a few hours in. And then you could still go out. So let's just take a look at this. And there's another option too is, maybe I could start studying at 5. So I could study for a few hours, and then I could go to the club afterwards for a few hours. Rational decision making, thinking maybe I could do both. Marginal cost and marginal benefit. What is the marginal benefit? What's the gain of studying every hour? So every hour you study, If you look at our Cristo Rey grade system of having 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, where an hour of study potentially gets you from a 2.5 to a 3.0. Maybe another hour of studying after that would get you from a 3.0 to a 3.5. So 1 hour of study, the marginal benefit might be a 0.5 increase in your GPA. A 0.5 increase in your GPA for an extra hour of study. That would be the marginal benefit. So marginal benefit, like a 0.5 increase. What's the marginal cost? Every hour you study is 1 hour less with your friends. Every hour you study is 1 hour less at the club maybe. Maybe you get there a little later. So 1 hour of dancing maybe. 1 hour of hanging out. 1 hour of sitting around with your friends and just talking. That would be cost, what you're giving up when you make those decisions. Now let's take a peek at what we call the law of diminishing marginal utility. The law of diminishing marginal utility. What is this? It's also called the law of diminishing returns. So the buffet would be the best example of this. The buffet would be the best example of this we call the law of diminishing return or the law of diminishing marginal utility. Basically, the buffet is a real good example to look at because in the buffet we have a whole bunch of food. And when you get to a buffet, you ever had this happen? I don't know about you, but I love the Chinese buffets. You get that first plate of food and you're just super hungry before you get there and you take that first bite. How good is that bite? It's probably the food you really like too. How good is that food? It is incredibly good. So your first bite is amazing, it's excellent, it is super good. But then what happens when you get to the second bite, the third bite, the fourth bite, the 50th bite, the 100th bite? Hello, are we in the chapel right now?